I stood before my own front door and listened to the cold beep of a rejected code. My husband had not just changed the locks, he had decided to rewrite the entire narrative of my life without a single warning. But 20 minutes later, everything changed. He thought he had locked me out of my future, but he did not know that someone was watching, and tonight, the truth would turn the lights on right in the middle of the crowd. My name is Elena Vance, and I had been awake for 36 hours when my life stopped making sense. I stood on the porch of the townhouse I had paid the down payment for, the sharp, chemical smell of hospital-grade antiseptic still clinging to my skin like a second layer of exhaustion. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. My fingers moved automatically to the keypad on the front door. 4 digits. The year we met. Click. Buzz. Red light. I frowned. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from the residual adrenaline of a 12-hour surgery that had gone sideways before we managed to stabilize the patient. I tried again, pressing the buttons harder this time. Click. Buzz. Red light. Ethan. I whispered to the dark wood. I pulled out my phone. I dialed his number. 1 ring, 2 rings, sent to voicemail. I stared at the screen, confused, until the phone vibrated in my hand. A single text message popped up. Don't come back. It's done. I read the words twice. They were sterile, clinical, like a time of death pronouncement. I looked down. To the left of the welcome mat, sitting in the shadows of the porch pillars, were 3 suitcases. My suitcases. They were not packed, they were stuffed. A sleeve of my favorite silk blouse was caught in the zipper of the large gray bag, hanging out like a gasp for air. It looked like trash left out for collection. Elena. I turned. Mrs. Higgins from next door was standing by her hedge, holding a pair of gardening shears she definitely did not need at this hour. She looked at me with pity. I hated pity. I didn't want to say anything, Mrs. Higgins said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But I saw the truck earlier, a locksmith, and, well, there was a young woman. She had boxes. I thought maybe. She trailed off, but the implication hung in the air like smoke. A young woman, I repeated. My voice was flat. She went inside with him, Mrs. Higgins said, clutching her cardigan. About 3 hours ago, they laughed when the lock beeped. I nodded once, stiffly. Thank you, Mrs. Higgins. I did not wait for her to apologize. I walked around the side of the house. The gravel crunched under my heels. I knew where the spare key was. Inside the hollow resin rock near the garden hose. I picked up the rock. The key was there. I jammed it into the back doorknob. It slid in halfway and stopped. He had changed the deadbolt. He had changed the handle. He had changed everything. I pulled out my phone again and opened the security app. I wanted to see them. I wanted to see the moment he erased me. Camera offline 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 4:30 in the afternoon. He had disabled the Wi-Fi. He had planned the blackout window exactly when the locksmith was there. This was not a crime of passion. This was a surgical extraction. He had removed me from my own home with the same precision I used to remove a tumor. My phone buzzed again. Not a text. A call. Mom, I said, answering before I could think. Elena. Honey. My mother's voice chirped, oblivious and bright. I'm just checking in. You're still coming to the hospital gala tonight, right? Dad is already in his tuxedo. He's excited to see you and Ethan. It's a big night for the donors. The gala, the annual fundraising ball. The one where Ethan and I were supposed to walk in holding hands, the successful surgeon and her charming husband, it was tonight. I had completely forgotten in the haze of the lockout. I looked at the back door. I looked at the new brass lock that shone under the motion sensor light. I could feel the cold seeping through my scrubs. Elena, are you there? I'm here, Mom, I said. My throat felt tight, but I forced the words out. I'm just running a little late. The shift ran long. Okay. Well, hurry up. Don't let Ethan keep you waiting. He won't, I said. I hung up. I walked back to the front porch and looked at my suitcases. I looked at the door that was legally mine, locked against me by a man who had texted me 5 words to end a 7-year marriage. I did not scream. I did not throw the bags. I just stood there, breathing in the scent of rain and betrayal, and realized that the Ethan I knew was dead. The man inside that house was a stranger. And strangers did not get to keep my house. I looked at the door one last time, my eyes dry. You think you're safe in there, I whispered. You have no idea. I did not panic. Panic was for interns who nicked an artery during their first rotation. I went into triage mode. I needed access, and I needed it immediately. I scrolled through my contacts and found the number for a 24-hour emergency locksmith service we had used when the garage door jammed last winter. Dispatch, a bored voice answered on the second ring. This is Dr. Elena Vance, I said, my voice steady. I am locked out of my home at 42 Maple Ridge Drive. I need a technician sent out to bypass a digital keypad. One moment, doctor. I heard the click of a keyboard. I see a service record here, but I also see a note from 4 o'clock this afternoon. A rekey request was completed for Mr. Ethan Vance. He provided proof of ownership and requested a do not duplicate hold on physical keys. I am also on the deed, I said, gripping the phone tighter. This is my primary residence. I have my driver's license. I understand. Ma'am, the dispatcher said, sounding practiced. But if one owner locks out another, company policy dictates we cannot intervene. That is considered a domestic civil dispute. You will need law enforcement to escort you. A civil dispute, I repeated. He changed the locks on his wife. I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't send a tech. The line went dead. I lowered the phone. A civil dispute. He had weaponized the bureaucracy against me. I leaned against the cold siding of the house and opened my banking application. The Face ID circle spun for a second before the dashboard loaded. My eyes went straight to the joint checking account. It was lighter than it should have been. I tapped on the transaction history. There it was. Dated 2 days ago. Transfer to E. Vance personal savings minus $25,000. He had drained the liquidity. He left just enough for the automatic mortgage payment, ensuring his credit score remained intact, while stripping me of the cash I would need for a hotel or a lawyer. Then came the notification banner sliding down from the top of my screen. It was an email from the power company. Security alert, new device login detected for your utility account. Location 42 Maple Ridge Drive. IP address local network. He was inside. Right now. He was sitting on our beige sectional, probably with his feet up on the coffee table I picked out, logging into our shared utility accounts to change the passwords. He was turning off the lights on my access, one digital switch at a time. A memory flashed in my mind, sharp and sickening. Last Tuesday, Ethan standing in the kitchen, pouring me coffee, smiling that boyish, charming smile. He had slid a stack of papers across the island counter. It's just for liability, Elle, he had said. With the malpractice insurance rates going up for the clinic, we should restructure the assets, keep the house safe. Just sign here, here, and here. I had signed. I was exhausted from a double shift, and I trusted him. I had signed documents that probably waived my right to immediate occupancy or authorized a separate property management entity. I frantically opened the cloud storage app on my phone. I needed to see the digital copies of the deed. I navigated to the folder labeled Home Docs. Folder empty. Activity log deleted by user Ethan V. 10 minutes ago. He was scrubbing the history. Mrs. Vance. I looked up. Mrs. Higgins was still standing by the hedge, looking torn between curiosity and genuine concern. She took a half-step closer. I heard them, she whispered, glancing at my front door as if it might bite her. The girl, he called her Sloane, and... When the locksmith finished and the door beeped, she laughed. She said, "That was easier than I thought." And then they both laughed. "They laughed," I said. Yes, it didn't sound like, well, it didn't sound like a mistake. The pieces clicked together with the terrifying precision of a bone setting back into place. This was not a heat-of-the-moment affair. He had not stumbled into bed with someone and panicked. This was an eviction. He had moved my clothes, drained the money, changed the locks, and secured the legal perimeter before he even sent that text. He had been planning this for months while sleeping next to me. I looked at the suitcases. I looked at the dark windows of the house. If I pounded on the door, if I screamed, if I called the police to make a scene, I would be the hysterical wife. I would be the unstable woman he was likely already painting me as to our friends. He wanted a reaction. He wanted me to break down so he could point at the pieces and say, "See, this is why I had to leave." "No," I whispered. I grabbed the handle of the largest suitcase. It was heavy, but I didn't care. I dragged it down the driveway, the wheels rumbling over the pavement. I threw it into the trunk of my car. I went back for the second one. Then, the third. Mrs. Higgins watched me. Are you going to your mother's?" "Not yet," I said. I got into the driver's seat. The leather was cold. I looked at the house one last time in the rearview mirror. I wasn't going to my mother's to cry. I needed a place with strong Wi-Fi, printer access, and zero emotional distractions. I put the car in gear. I didn't just need a lawyer. I needed a forensic timeline. He wanted a war. He was about to find out that he had declared it on a surgeon who knew exactly how to cut without shaking. I pulled my car into the desolate back lot of a 24-hour pharmacy 3 blocks from my house. I cut the engine, but I did not turn off the lights. I needed to see. I laid my phone on the passenger seat like a scalpel on a tray. I was not a wife anymore. I was a surgeon looking at a patient who was crashing on the table, and I had to find the source of the bleed before the heart stopped. I opened my calendar, my messages, and my shared notes. I cross-referenced them with the transaction history I had just seen. I was building a timeline. The restructuring of the assets started 3 months ago. The business dinner started 6 weeks ago. It was clinical. It was precise. I dialed Marissa. She was the head of IT security at the hospital, and she was the only person I trusted to pick up on the first ring. "Elena?" Her voice was tight. "I was just about to text you. Why aren't you at the gala?" "Marissa, listen to me very carefully," I said, my voice dropping to that low, controlled register I used when an artery burst. "I need you to check the access logs for my work email. Right now." "Okay. Give me a second." I heard the furious clacking of mechanical keys. "I'm in." "What am I looking for?" "Did I send anything to HR today specifically in the last 2 hours?" There was a silence on the line that lasted 10 seconds. It felt like an hour. "Elena," Marissa said, and her voice sounded horrified. "There is an outgoing email sent at 6:15. It went to the head of human resources and the chief of surgery. It's a request for an immediate, indefinite, unpaid leave of absence due to severe personal instability and burnout." The air left my lungs. He wasn't just taking the house. He was trying to kill my career. If I didn't show up tonight, and that email was the only explanation, I would be labeled a liability. A surgeon with instability was a surgeon who never held a knife again. "I didn't send that," I said. "Marissa, look at the IP address." "I'm looking," she said, typing faster now. "It's not the hospital network. It's coming from a residential IP. Wait, that's your home IP address." "He hacked me," I said. "He logged in from the house while I was driving home." "I am locking it down," Marissa said, her tone shifting from friend to professional. "I'm resetting your credentials. I'm flagging the IP as hostile." "Elena, you need to get to the gala. You need to be seen." "I know." I hung up. I immediately opened my settings. I changed my passwords. I enabled two-factor authentication on everything from my retirement accounts to my social media. My fingers flew across the glass. They were trembling slightly, a fine tremor that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the chemical dump of adrenaline flooding my system. I was in a fight for my life. My phone rang again. It was a blocked number. I stared at it for a second, then swiped green. "Hello?" "You should leave in silence," a voice said. It was a woman. She sounded young, breathless, and terrifyingly calm. "Ethan says you're prone to outbursts. It would be better for your reputation if you just went to your mother's house and rested." It was her. Sloane. "You are using my Wi-Fi," I said. "And you are wearing my jewelry." "I'm just passing on a message," she purred, a hint of steel entering the sweetness. "Ethan wants a clean break. Don't make this ugly. Elena, you really don't look good when you're angry." The line went dead. I lowered the phone. A clean break. They wanted to erase me. They wanted me to disappear into the night so they could play house in my living room and walk the red carpet at my hospital. I looked at the dashboard clock. It had been exactly 20 minutes since I stood in front of my locked door. Suddenly, headlights swept across my windshield. A massive black SUV pulled into the spot directly next to me, boxing me in. I stiffened, my hand reaching for the tire iron under my seat. The back door of the SUV opened. A man stepped out. He was older, perhaps in his late 50s, wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my car. He had silver hair and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. He didn't look around. He looked straight at me through my window. I recognized him. Everyone in the city recognized him. I rolled down my window 2 inches. "Can I help you?" I asked. He leaned down slightly. The scent of expensive cologne and tobacco drifted into my car. "I am Grant Caldwell," he said. His voice was deep, gravelly, and commanded absolute attention. "I saw you pull in here. I have been following the digital footprint of a certain property for 2 weeks, and today, the alarms went off." "You're following me?" I asked, my grip on the steering wheel tightening. "I am following the man who just locked you out of your house," Grant corrected. "I need to speak with you, Dr. Vance, right now, because of my daughter." I stared at him. "Your daughter. You saved her life 14 days ago," Grant said. "And the man who stole your house is currently trying to launder money through a shell company that connects to the contractor who built my daughter's apartment complex, a complex that had a gas leak." He placed a hand on the roof of my car. "I don't believe in coincidences, Doctor, and I don't believe in letting people get away with fraud. Tonight, you and I have a common enemy." I froze, my hand hovering near the door handle. The name Caldwell carried weight in this city. Bridges, hospitals, and wings of museums were named after his family. But standing in the dim light of a pharmacy parking lot, he looked less like a titan of industry and more like a father who had seen something terrifying. "Sophia," he said softly, "my daughter is 22. She came into your ER 2 weeks ago. Multi-vehicle collision on the interstate. You were the attending trauma surgeon." The memory surfaced through the fog of my own crisis. A young girl, pale as a sheet, hypotensive, internal bleeding. I had operated for 4 hours to save her spleen. "I remember her," I said. "She stabilized well. She is alive because of you," Grant said. He reached into his jacket pocket. "I wanted to send a card. I didn't want to intrude on your privacy. But then my security team flagged a real estate anomaly in this neighborhood during a routine audit of my holdings. We own the complex down the street." He pulled out a thick envelope and slid it through my open window. It landed on the passenger seat next to my phone. "I am not here just to say thank you. Dr. Vance, I am here because the name on the fraudulent transfer alert was Ethan Vance." I looked at the envelope. My heart hammered against my ribs. You have been tracking us." "I track threats," Grant replied, his voice hardening. And fraud is a threat. Look at the second page. I opened the envelope. My hands shook as I pulled out a photocopy of a document. It was a quitclaim deed transferring full ownership of our townhouse to a shell company called New Leaf Holdings. The signature, Grant said. Look at the signature. It was my name. It was my loop on the L and the sharp cross on the T. But I had never seen this document in my life. It's a forgery, I whispered. I never signed this. I know, Grant said. The notary stamp belongs to a man who lost his license 3 years ago. Ethan is trying to move the asset before you even know it is gone. He is desperate. Dr. Vance? And desperate men make loud mistakes. I looked up at him. Why are you showing me this? Why didn't you just call the police? Because the police take reports, Grant said, leaning closer. They file paperwork. They take months. By the time they unravel this, your husband will have sold the house and destroyed your credit. He paused, his gray eyes locking onto mine. I can't fight this war for you, Elena. I can't be your savior. But I can give you a choice. You can drive to your mother's house, cry yourself to sleep, and let him tell everyone tonight that you had a mental breakdown. The gala. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Ethan wasn't just hiding, he was going public. He and Sloane were going to walk into that ballroom, under the chandeliers, and present themselves as the stable, grieving parties while I was locked out in the cold. They will be there, Grant said quietly. He will have her on his arm. He will tell the board members that you are unwell. He will control the narrative. He wants to ruin me, I said. The fear was evaporating, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. Yes, Grant said. So the question is simple. Do you want them to win with a lie? Or do you want to hold the microphone? My phone buzzed again on the seat. I glanced down, a text from my mother. Elena, where are you? I'm worried. People are asking. I picked up the phone. I did not type out an explanation. I did not type out a plea for help. I typed 2 sentences. I am fine. I will be there. I looked back at Grant. He was waiting. I don't have a dress, I said. I'm in scrubs. My driver has a trunk full of options, Grant said, a small, grim smile touching his lips. And I have a lawyer meeting us in the lobby in 10 minutes. We don't need a scene, doctor. We just need the truth. I'm not going to make a scene, I said, starting my engine. I'm going to finish it. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to slap Ethan. That was what he wanted, the hysterical, scorned woman. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. I was a surgeon. When I found a malignancy, I didn't get angry at it. I cut it out. I exposed it to the light. I separated the healthy tissue from the rot, and I removed it. I'll see you there, I said to Grant. He nodded and stepped back. I put the car in reverse. I wasn't driving away from my life anymore. I was driving toward the operating table. And tonight, the patient was the truth. I drove to the hospital, but not to work. I went straight to the attending physician's locker room. My hands were steady now. I stripped off my scrubs, shoving them into a bin like I was discarding a past life. I didn't have a gala dress, but I had a spare black suit I kept for board meetings and unexpected conferences. It was sharp, tailored, and severe. I pulled my hair back into a tight, low bun and applied a single coat of red lipstick. I did not look like a woman going to a party. I looked like a woman going to court. My phone buzzed on the bench. It was Marissa. Subject: the smoking gun. Attachment: IP, log trace. Vance, res PDF, message. The request to HR came from a laptop named Ethan's MacBook Pro. I also found the spoofing software he used to mimic your signature. I have it all printed. I stared at the screen. He had not just impersonated me. He had done it clumsily, arrogant enough to think I wouldn't check. I walked down to the lobby. A man in a charcoal suit was waiting for me near the donor wall. He introduced himself as Mr. Sterling, Grant's family attorney. He did not waste time on pleasantries. We have 10 minutes, Sterling said, handing me a folder. The goal tonight is not to make a scene. It is to make a record. If he approaches you, let him speak first. Let witnesses hear him. Do not scream. Do not cry. You are a surgeon. Be clinical." "I can do clinical," I said. I took the folder and walked out to the waiting town car. The drive to the riverfront hotel took 15 minutes. The ballroom was awash of crystal chandeliers and the deafening hum of 500 wealthy people pretending to like each other. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. I stood at the top of the grand staircase and scanned the room. It took me 3 seconds to find them. Ethan was standing near the center of the room, holding court with 2 board members. He looked perfect in his tuxedo, the picture of the grieving, supportive husband he was pretending to be. And next to him was Sloane. She was wearing a floor-length emerald gown that hugged every curve. She was laughing at something a donor said, her hand resting possessively on Ethan's arm. Then I saw it. On her left wrist, glittering under the ballroom lights, was a diamond tennis bracelet. My diamond tennis bracelet. The one I had lost 6 months ago. The one Ethan had helped me search for, swearing I must have left it at the gym. A cold fire ignited in my chest. He hadn't just stolen my house. He had been giving away pieces of my life as souvenirs. "Elena." I turned. Dr. Hemlock, the chief of cardiology, was staring at me with a confused expression, a half-empty glass of wine in his hand. I thought you were on leave," he stammered. "The email said you were taking a sabbatical." "For personal reasons?" I smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "Who told you that?" "David." "Well, the board was talking about it. Ethan said you were having a hard time." "Ethan says a lot of things," I replied smoothly. "As you can see, I am perfectly fine." I walked past him, leaving him standing in a pool of awkward silence. I cut a path through the crowd. The sea of black tuxedos and colorful gowns parted around me. Ethan saw me when I was 20 feet away. His smile faltered. For a split second, I saw pure, unadulterated panic in his eyes. He whispered something to Sloane, who turned and went pale. He quickly composed himself, putting on a mask of deep, pained concern, and walked toward me. "Elena," he said, his voice loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "What are you doing here? I thought we agreed you needed rest." He reached out to take my arm, his grip firm, trying to steer me away from the center of the room. "You're not well," he hissed under his breath, leaning close to my ear so only I could hear. "Don't embarrass yourself, Elle. Go home. I'll deal with you later." I didn't pull away. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him, then at Sloane, and finally at the bracelet on her wrist. I am not the one who should be worried about embarrassment. "Ethan," I said, my voice low and steady. I didn't attack. I just stood there, an immovable object in the middle of his carefully constructed stage, waiting for the cracks to show, and they were already starting to spread. Sloane stepped forward, the emerald silk of her dress swishing softly against the floor. She placed a manicured hand on her chest, her face arranging itself into a mask of practiced sympathy that made my stomach turn. "Elena, please," she said, her voice pitched high and sweet, designed to carry just enough for the onlookers to hear the concern, but not the malice. "You are misunderstanding everything. Ethan told me how fragile you have been lately. He said you need to rest." She reached out as if to touch my arm, acting the part of the supportive friend dealing with a mental patient. I did not step back. I did not flinch. I just looked at the diamond bracelet on her wrist, my bracelet, and then locked eyes with her. "If I am just confused, Sloane," I said, my voice cutting through the ambient noise like a scalpel. "And if this is all just a misunderstanding about my health." "Then how did you know the code to my front door had been changed before I even got home?" Sloane froze. Her hand stopped in mid-air. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The logic trap snapped shut around her ankle. If she was just a concerned friend, she would have no reason to know about the locks. If she knew about the locks, she was an accomplice. Ethan saw the panic in her eyes. He moved instantly, stepping between us and gripping my elbow with bruising force. "That is enough," he hissed. He dragged me toward a secluded alcove near the emergency exit, away from the prying eyes of the donors and the board members. The shadows here were deep, hiding the violence in his grip. He released me and reached into the inside pocket of his tuxedo, pulling out a folded document. "I was going to wait until tomorrow," Ethan said, his voice low and vibrating with anger. "But since you decided to crash the party, we are doing this now. I have arranged a settlement for you. A generous one." He shoved the paper into my hand. I unfolded it. It was a single page, dense with legal jargon. My eyes scanned the paragraphs, picking out the key phrases with the speed of someone used to reading urgent medical charts. One lump sum payment of $20,000. Full waiver of all marital assets, including the primary residence. Non-disclosure agreement regarding the termination of marriage. And then, at the bottom, a paragraph that made my blood run cold. Signatory admits to a history of professional instability and agrees to resign from St. Jude's Hospital to seek treatment for inappropriate workplace behavior. I looked up at him. The room seemed to tilt. "You aren't just trying to divorce me," I said, the realization hitting me with the force of a physical blow. "You are trying to destroy my license. Inappropriate workplace behavior. You are framing me. It is your word against mine," Ethan said, a smug, cruel smile touching his lips. "And right now, you look like the crazy ex-wife who showed up uninvited to a gala in a business suit. If you sign this, you get the money and you get to keep your medical license, provided you move to another state. If you fight me, I will release the reports I have been compiling about your erratic behavior for the last 6 months." He had weaponized my long shifts. He had twisted my exhaustion into insanity. He had deleted my files and emptied my accounts to make me look irresponsible. And now he was offering me a lifeboat that was actually an anchor. I looked past Ethan's shoulder. Standing near a pillar about 30 feet away was Grant Caldwell. He was holding a glass of sparkling water, his back to us, but I saw his reflection in the mirrored wall. He was watching. He was not intervening. He was the silent witness I needed to make this legally binding. I looked back at Ethan. "You really think this will work?" I asked. "I know it will work," Ethan sneered, leaning in closer, his breath hot against my face. "Because you are all alone, Elena. You think just because you are a good doctor, people will protect you. No one stands with you, not the board, not your friends, not even your family. You are a liability." He waited for me to break. He waited for the tears. He waited for the woman he had married to crumble under the weight of his betrayal. I folded the paper calmly and placed it in my pocket. "You are right," I said. Ethan blinked, surprised by my capitulation. "I do not need anyone to stand with me." I continued, my voice steady, devoid of any fear. "I do not need a team. I just need the truth." Ethan laughed, a short, sharp sound of dismissal. "The truth is whatever I say it is. We will see," I said. I turned and walked away from him, not toward the exit, but toward the stage where the microphone was waiting. I walked straight to the perimeter of the ballroom where a man in a dark suit stood with an earpiece coil running down his neck. He was the head of hotel security. I recognized him from previous hospital fundraisers. I did not ask for a favor. I reported a threat. "Mr. Henderson," I said, keeping my voice low, "I need you to preserve the footage from the East Corridor alcove. Timestamp 8:35 to 8:40. I was just cornered by a guest who tried to force me to sign a legal document under duress. I believe it constitutes harassment." He looked at me, assessing the situation. "Do you want us to remove him, Dr. Vance?" "Not yet," I said. "Just secure the tape. I might need it for the police report later." He nodded once, tapping his earpiece. The trap was set. My phone vibrated against my palm. It was Marissa again. I stepped behind a pillar to read the message. The text was long and dense with technical vindication. HR just flagged the resignation email. They traced the recovery phone number linked to the device that sent it. It ends in 5590. That's Ethan's personal cell. They have opened a fraud ticket. He didn't just hack you, he left his fingerprint on the digital gun. I felt a cold rush of satisfaction. He was sloppy. He was so arrogant in his belief that I would crumble that he hadn't bothered to cover his tracks properly. A moment later, Mr. Sterling, Grant's lawyer, appeared at my elbow. He didn't look at the crowd, pretending to admire the floral arrangements. "We found the LLC," he murmured. "New Leaf Holdings. It was registered 3 days ago using your social security number as the primary guarantor, but the contact address is a P.O. box in Nevada, and we ran a background check on Miss Sloan." I took a sip of water to steady my hands. "She is just his mistress. She is a former real estate broker who lost her license in Arizona for escrow fraud." Sterling corrected. "She isn't just a mistress. Doctor. She is a professional launderer. She helps men hide assets during divorces. Ethan didn't meet her by accident. He hired her." The realization hit me harder than the lockout had. This wasn't a romance. It was a business transaction designed to bankrupt me. Ethan hadn't fallen in love. He had recruited an accomplice to strip mine my life. My phone rang in my hand. It was my mother. I stared at the screen. The noise of the gala, the clinking glasses, the laughter, the string quartet playing Mozart seemed to fade. I slid my thumb to answer. "Mom, I saw the news." "Well, the neighborhood chat," my mother said. Her voice was trembling slightly. "Mrs. Higgins said she saw you dragging suitcases. Elena, tell me the truth." I closed my eyes for a second. I wanted to cry. I wanted to be the little girl who ran home when she scraped her knee. But I couldn't be that girl tonight. "I am fine, Mom," I said. I am just closing a door that should have been shut a long time ago." There was a silence on the line. Then my mother spoke, her voice suddenly fierce and clear. "Don't you dare ask anyone for a place to stand. Elena, you stand yourself. You hear me. You earned that ground. I hear you," I whispered. "I love you." I hung up. That sentence anchored me. "Stand yourself." A text message banner dropped down from the top of my screen. It was Ethan. He was watching me from across the room, his eyes narrow and dangerous. "If you make a scene, I will tell the board you abandoned your patients during a critical shift to come here and get drunk. I have the roster. No one will believe you." He was doubling down. He was going to use my dedication to my job against me. I opened my photo album. I scrolled past the pictures of our vacation, past the pictures of the dog we adopted, back to the photo I took at 6 o'clock this morning. It was a picture of the sign-out sheet, stamped and signed by the chief of surgery, noting my clear handoff of all patients. I took it every morning, a habit from my residency days, to protect against liability. I had the time-stamped proof that I had left my patients in perfect care. I looked across the room at Ethan. He was raising his champagne glass to a donor, smiling that winning smile, thinking he held all the cards. He didn't know I was holding a royal flush. I put the phone away. I checked my reflection in the dark window glass. My lipstick was perfect. My spine was straight. It was time. The ballroom lights dimmed, casting the cavernous room into a hush of anticipation. The only illumination came from 2 massive spotlights that swept across the floor, cutting through the darkness like searchlights seeking a target. The master of ceremonies, a local news anchor with a voice like polished brass, stepped up to the podium. "And now," the MC announced, his voice booming through the speakers, "we want to recognize our community pillars. Please, welcome to the stage a couple who have pledged a significant donation to the new pediatric wing. Mr. Ethan Vance and his partner." I stood in the shadows near the dessert table and watched my husband take the hand of the woman who had helped him liquidate our assets. The spotlight hit them. Ethan beamed. A perfect, practiced expression of humility and grace. Sloane looked down shyly, then up at the crowd, playing the role of the supportive philanthropist to perfection. The applause was polite, a ripple of sound from 500 pairs of hands that had no idea they were clapping for a crime in progress. My heart rate did not spike. It dropped. It was a phenomenon I had experienced 1,000 times in the operating room, when the monitor alarmed, when the blood pressure bottomed out, when everyone else in the room panicked. I went cold. My vision narrowed. The noise of the world fell away, leaving only the problem and the solution. I was not a wife watching her marriage die. I was a surgeon standing over an incision, scalpel in hand, waiting for the exact moment to make the cut. "Thank you," Ethan mouthed to the crowd as they reached center stage. He placed a hand on the small of Sloane's back. He looked untouchable. Then the MC spoke again. "And to present the award, please welcome our largest benefactor, Mr. Grant Caldwell." The applause grew louder, deeper. Grant emerged from the opposite wing of the stage. He did not smile. He walked with the heavy, purposeful stride of a man who owned the building and everything in it. He stopped at the podium, gripping the sides with both hands. He did not look at the audience. He looked directly at Ethan, and then his gaze traveled past the blinding lights, searching the darkness until he found me. He nodded, a movement so slight only I saw it. "Thank you," Grant said into the microphone. The room went silent. "I am not here tonight to talk about money. I am here to talk about life. 2 weeks ago, my daughter was pulled from a wreck that should have killed her." Ethan's smile faltered. He shifted his weight. Sloane tightened her grip on his hand, her knuckles turning white against the emerald fabric of her dress. They were trapped in the spotlight, forced to listen. "She is alive," Grant continued, his voice rough with suppressed emotion, "because of the skill and the steady hands of one person. A doctor who is with us tonight." A murmur ran through the crowd. Heads turned, scanning the tables, looking for the hero. Ethan leaned slightly toward the MC, probably to whisper that we should wrap this up, that his wife was not here, that she was sick. I saw his lips move. I saw the panic starting to crack the porcelain mask of his face. Grant ignored him. He leaned into the microphone. "I know the program says we are moving to the auction," Grant said, "but I would like to invite that doctor up here for just 60 seconds. I think she deserves to be seen." Ethan froze. He looked like a deer staring down the barrel of a rifle. He couldn't stop it. He couldn't drag Sloane off stage without causing a scene. He was paralyzed by the very social etiquette he had tried to use against me. "Dr. Elena Vance." Grant's voice rang out like a gavel. "Please join us." The spotlight swung wildly, searching the room until it hit me. I did not flinch. I smoothed the front of my black suit. I took a breath, and then I began to walk. The room was deadly silent. The only sound was the sharp, rhythmic click of my heels on the hardwood floor. Click, click, click. It sounded like a countdown. It sounded like the ticking of a bomb that had finally reached 0. I walked up the stairs to the stage. I felt the heat of the lights on my face. I walked past Sloane, who shrank back as if I were contagious. I walked past Ethan, who was staring at me with a mixture of horror and fury, his eyes screaming a threat he couldn't voice. I stopped at the podium. Grant stepped aside, offering me the microphone. I looked out at the sea of faces. I looked at the camera crews broadcasting live. Then I turned my head slowly and looked at Ethan. I didn't need a weapon. I had the truth. And I was about to perform the most important operation of my life. I gripped the cold metal of the microphone stand with one hand. I did not look at the audience, nor did I look at the cameras that were undoubtedly zooming in on my face. I looked straight ahead, past the blinding glare of the spotlights, fixing my eyes on the red exit sign at the back of the room. I let the silence stretch for 5 seconds, long enough for the polite applause to die down into a confused murmur. Tonight, "I did not come here to accept an award," I said, my voice magnified by the speakers, steady and devoid of tremors. "I came here because 3 hours ago, someone changed the locks on my home, and 20 minutes later, that same person tried to change the story of my life." The gasp from the audience was audible, a sharp intake of breath that rippled through the ballroom. Ethan reacted instantly. He lunged toward me, his face twisting from charm into pure, unadulterated rage. "Elena, stop this!" he shouted, reaching for the microphone. "She's having an episode. Cut the mic." He was fast, but Mr. Henderson's security team was faster. 2 large men in dark suits stepped out from the wings and blocked his path, forming a human wall between him and me. The hotel cameras and the press feeds captured it all, the husband trying to physically silence his wife on stage. He froze, realizing too late that his aggression was now public record. I did not flinch. I did not step back. I kept my voice flat, reciting the facts like I was reading a chart during rounds. "Fact 1, I said clearly. At 6:15 this evening, an email was sent from my work account resigning from my position at the hospital. I was driving my car at that time. The IP address of the sender matches the device currently in Ethan's pocket. I saw Ethan pat his jacket pocket instinctively, a tell he couldn't control. Fact 2, I continued. Yesterday, $25,000 was transferred from our joint checking account to a private account solely in his name. And fact 3, I pulled the folded document from my blazer pocket and held it up to the light. 10 minutes ago, in the hallway of this hotel, I was handed this waiver and told to sign it or face professional ruin. It is a confession of instability that I never wrote, designed to strip me of my career and my assets. Suddenly, the master of ceremonies pressed a hand to his earpiece, his face draining of color. He stepped up to the second microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have just received a message from the hospital administration table." The MC stammered. A woman stood up near the front. It was the Vice President of Human Resources. She didn't need a microphone, her voice carried with authority. "St. Jude's can confirm that we have opened an active investigation into unauthorized access of Dr. Vance's credentials," she announced. "We are currently cooperating with the police regarding identity theft." The air in the room seemed to vanish. Ethan looked at Sloane. Sloane looked at the floor, her composure disintegrating. "Ethan," Sloane whispered, but in the pin-drop silence, the stage mics picked it up. "Ethan, you said she wouldn't dare. You said she was handled." The crowd went dead silent. It was the death knell. She hadn't denied the theft. She had only complained that the plan to silence me had failed. Ethan looked around wildly, seeing the judgment in the eyes of the donors he had spent years courting. He played his last card. He pointed a shaking finger at me, his eyes wide and frantic. "She is lying," he yelled, his voice cracking. "She is unstable." The pressure of the job got to her. "I did all of this to protect her. She is sick." I leaned closer to the microphone. "If I am so mentally unstable," "Ethan," I asked, my voice soft but cutting, "then why did you use my identity to legally form a limited liability company 3 days ago? Do you usually entrust your hidden real estate assets to people having a breakdown?" Ethan's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Grant stepped forward. He moved with a slow, heavy gravity. He didn't look at Ethan. He placed a thick manila folder on the podium with a heavy thud that echoed through the sound system. "This is a civil lawsuit for fraud and forgery," Grant said, his voice deep and final. "And this is the forensic accounting report on the shell company used to launder the funds. It is over, Ethan." The room erupted into whispers, a buzzing hive of scandal and shock. Ethan stood there, stripped of his narrative, naked in front of the people whose validation he craved most. He had lost the crowd. He had lost the gala. But as I looked at him, I knew this wasn't finished. He had lost his reputation, but he still held the deed. The real knot wasn't here on this stage. It was waiting for me back at the house with the new locks. I did not stay to hear the applause. The moment I placed the microphone back on the stand, the adrenaline that had sustained me evaporated, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. I walked down the stage steps, past the stunned faces of the hospital board, and straight toward the exit. Mr. Sterling was already waiting by the doors with 2 uniformed officers. We did not speak. We simply got into the cars and drove back to the townhouse that was no longer a home. The drive took 20 minutes. When we arrived, the house was dark. The new locks Ethan had installed earlier that day were still gleaming under the porch light, a mockery of security. The police officer knocked once, announced his presence, and when there was no answer, he authorized the locksmith we had brought to drill the core. The door swung open. The silence inside was heavy. "Stay behind me." "Ma'am," the officer said. But I knew he was gone. The hallway was littered with debris. A vase was knocked over. Hangers were scattered on the floor. It looked like a panic room. Ethan had not come here to sleep. He had come here to destroy evidence and pack a go bag before the police caught up with him. I walked into the home office. The shredder bin was full. The hard drive tower was missing from under the desk. But panic makes people sloppy. In his haste to clear out the safe, he had dropped a single manila envelope behind the filing cabinet. I knelt down and pulled it out. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of the betrayal. I opened the flap and pulled out a stack of documents. "Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You need to see this." It was a loan agreement, a home equity line of credit for $150,000 taken out against the house 3 weeks ago. And at the bottom of the page, next to Ethan's signature, was my name. The handwriting was a shaky imitation of my own. Suddenly, the timeline made perfect sense. He hadn't changed the locks just to move Sloan in. He had changed the locks to keep the bank appraisers and the foreclosure notices out. He wasn't just leaving me for another woman. He was drowning in debt and had used my credit score as a life raft. And he needed me physically removed from the property before the bank realized I had never signed a thing. "This is criminal fraud," Sterling said, snapping a photo of the document with his phone. "I am filing for an immediate emergency injunction to freeze the funds. If he tries to move that money tonight, the bank will flag it." "He won't get far," the officer added, speaking into his radio. "We have a warrant authorized for identity theft. We will add forgery to the list." By the time we left the house, the sun was threatening to rise. I didn't go back to the hotel. I didn't go to a friend's house. I drove to the one place that had never changed its locks on me. My mother opened the door before I even knocked. She was wearing her bathrobe, her face lined with worry. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't ask about the gala or the money or the scandal. She just pulled me into the kitchen and set a bowl of hot soup in front of me. "Eat," she said softly. "You look pale." I sat there in my business suit, smelling the familiar scent of my childhood home. And finally, I let myself breathe. I slept for 4 hours in my old twin bed. When I woke up, my phone was full of notifications. The hospital had released a formal statement. "Dr. Elena Vance has been fully cleared of all allegations regarding professional misconduct. The individual responsible for the unauthorized access to our internal systems has been identified, and legal action is pending. We stand by our surgeon. My reputation was clean. My name was mine again." I went back to the townhouse one last time that afternoon. I didn't take the furniture. I didn't take the expensive art. I took my medical diplomas off the wall. I took the photo albums of my parents. I took my favorite coat. I left the rest. I left the hollow shell of a life that had been built on lies. As I walked out to my car, I paused on the walkway. I looked back at the front door. The hole where the lock used to be was covered with tape until the new owners, whoever they might be after the bank seized it, decided what to do. Ethan had thought he was the author of this story. He thought he could write me out of the script with a keypad code and a text message. He thought he could lock me out of my own existence. He changed the locks to cut off my way home. I whispered to the empty street. But 20 minutes later, he locked himself out of my life forever. I got into my car and drove away, not looking back. The rearview mirror was clear, and for the first time in a long time, so was the road ahead. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from. I would love to hear your thoughts and connect with you. If you enjoyed this revenge drama, please subscribe to the Mia Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach even more people. Your support means the world to me.